What's going on, people? Georgio Savvides here, founder of the Hip Hop Orchestra, as well as the host of the Hip Hop Orchestra Presents podcast. And I got a really exciting announcement to finally make with everyone, is that we have our very first official sponsor for the podcast. Now, they are an amazing company called Eldon's Vault, who are extremely dedicated in bringing you the very best in officially licensed merchandise from pop culture. And when I mean the very best, I mean the very best. They provide things like keyrings, caps, t-shirts, to Funko Pops, to statues from all over, such as DC, Marvel, Disney, The Mandalorian, Harry Potter, music artists from all over the place, and they are ridiculously good. I've got a couple of things to show you on offer at the moment. This trust me, their stuff is amazing. So, t-shirts, like I mentioned, like the one I'm wearing right now. It's got Rocky right here, which I absolutely love. Or, like I said, also got Funko Pops as well, 3.75 inches and 10 inches. I've got a couple of 10 inches right here for you. I've got Post Malone right here, and I've also got Biggie right here, who I absolutely love. These are so sick. Eldon's Vault, trust me, they are amazing. Now, I'm going to leave the link below in the video right here, and also in the description below as well in all future videos from the podcast. But trust me, Eldon's Vault are amazing. Website is www.eldonsvault.co.uk. Get in touch with them now and start buying ASAP. But also, before I forget as well, I just want to say the biggest thank you to Eldon's Vault for sponsoring the podcast. It means the absolute world to me. Thank you. And trust me, get in touch with them right now. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And peace. What's going on, people? Welcome to another brand new edition of the podcast. And today we are joined by another incredible guest today, violinist and leader of the BBC Symphony Orchestra, Mr. Stephen Bryant. How are you, sir? You okay?
I'm very good, Georgio. Yeah, how are you?
You know, I'm doing really well, thank you. Really well, thank you. We were saying before the podcast, actually, that you're learning how to do sort of more videos now, aren't you, at the moment?
Yeah, I'm because it's been such a weird time.
Yeah.
For almost a year now, isn't it? Getting on for.
Mm.
Yeah, I've sort of been doing more video stuff, interviews and video recordings, which has been good.
That's good. What kind of videos are you working on at the moment? What kind of, are they more like, you know, obviously podcasts and interviews and videos? Are you doing kind of live performances as well at the moment?
Not right at this moment. I actually had today. I was due to do a concert with BBC Symphony Orchestra and Paul Weller.
Wow.
And Jules Buckley, who was going to be conducting. So that's been cancelled. So no, it is a short answer. I'm not doing a huge amount, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that with the vaccines coming out, that hopefully we get back to something a little more normal soon.
Of course, fingers crossed. I mean, how have you been coping over the past sort of year or so? Have you been okay?
Yeah, I mean, I find not having concerts, I find quite hard, because my life has always been sort of, you know, preparing for a concert, getting wound up about it, doing the concert, maybe having a day off to relax, and then starting on the next thing. So not having deadlines and that kind of thing is a bit weird, but to make up for it, we're moving house at the moment. So
okay.
That gives us a deadline and a bit of stress.
Are you moving quite far away from where you are right now, or is it still kind of same sort of area?
Yeah, same sort of area, Surrey, but it's about half an hour drive closer to London.
Ah, that's good. Lovely. I wish you all the very best of luck with that.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. But it must be a very weird sensation for someone like you, who obviously is the leader of the BBC Symphony Orchestra, to be going from being sort of incredibly busy to not having that much on. It must be really weird for you.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the good thing is that you always need to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you a lot of time for practicing. So that's good,
That is
because that's
good.
what you want. But yeah, as I said, it's just the lack of getting edgy for something, which, getting the adrenaline going.
Of course.
Yeah.
Have you in the BBC been able to kind of work on any collaborative projects of the last year or so during this lockdown period? You said obviously
Yeah,
videos
we
and so
have.
forth. Yeah.
Yeah, we have. We did a couple of online promenade concerts.
Okay.
So stuff like Last Night at the Proms, you may have
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
watched at some point or heard
Of course.
about.
Yeah.
So we did an online First Night at the Proms and an online Last Night at the Proms. But I mean that was great, but because we have to be socially distanced, so we're in the orchestra is half the size that it would normally be, and we're sitting about 6 foot away from each other.
Oh wow.
So it's better than doing nothing, but it's still a bit weird.
Of course. And was that the Royal Albert Hall that you did that again this year for that version?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Brilliant. How many members were you? Said obviously half the members. How many roughly were there that you're working with?
Probably the orchestra's normally around about 70 to 80 members. So we were working 35 maybe.
Wow. How did that work then in terms of organisation? It must be still obviously really hard to work on, even with that many people. Did you have a big team to work with in order to organise the whole event?
Yes, I mean we have a very good team at the BBC Symphony and actually a really good team at the Proms as well. They're really excellent. So I mean we had a lot of new things like being called to go up on the stage at like 2-minute intervals so that you didn't go anywhere near anybody else. And so, yeah, there was a lot to organise, a lot of new things. But as I said, at least we were doing something. So that was good.
Definitely. And I want to get into it more later down the podcast, actually. But is that one of your roles as leader, is to help with these kind of events in terms of organisation skills, to the piece that you might be playing and so forth? Is that one of your roles as leader?
To a degree. I don't, as a leader, I don't have a particular saying in the repertoire. Nobody in the orchestra does, but and I certainly don't, fortunately, I don't have to do things like organising people to go on stage and that kind of stuff, because I'd be terrible at that. But yeah, you still have to prepare the music beforehand. You have to look at the string parts and you have to bow them and, put pencil marks in and all that kind of business. So you always have to do that.
Wow, I can imagine. And you mentioned obviously practice a minute ago as well. I mean, how have you found your kind of discipline since everything had been cancelled? Have you found it still okay? You're able to practice still as much as you like to, or do you find that you need something to work on in order to practice?
No, it's a good question. I think what I found is I like practicing. It's kind of like, I find it quite relaxing. It's like sort of going into a kind of a Zen kind of place. So I like doing it, and I've always practiced a lot. But what I've noticed is that because there's no deadlines and there's no pressure, you don't spring out of bed. You might get out of bed half an hour later because you think, well, look, I haven't got anything else to do, so I can add the half an hour later on. So I'm not sure that's very good, but hopefully I won't be doing it for much longer. So
hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
But I know that some people actually, they kind of prefer that pressure to make them practice, and it also makes them sort of learn better as well. Is that the same with you? Do you feel like pressure makes you better, or do you sometimes prefer just to have that kind of extra time to work on what you need to?
I think a bit of both. I think there's the fear factor, the fear of failure in a sort of performance. That's a very good motivator, definitely. But I also think that it can sometimes go the other way, where you're so frightened of whatever pressure there might be that you know, you kind of you go the other way, you become negative. So it's kind of like a fine balance, but yeah, you definitely need some pressure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And you actually started violin at the age of 6. Let's think about the beginning. You started at the age of 6, didn't you, the violin?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the piano before that, as when you were 5.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you still play piano at any point, or is it just
Yeah,
violin
yeah,
at the
I
moment?
do. During lockdown, I even did a couple of videos of playing the piano. Just I'm not a great pianist, but you know, just a kind of a silly thing where I think I did my arrangement of Moon River as a on the piano. So just, I guess, things to entertain myself more than anything else, really.
Ah, lovely. And who got you into music originally? Are your family involved in music at all, or friends and so forth? How did you get started in music at such a young age?
It was, I mean, it was a bit weird, to be honest. My parents weren't musical at all. Um, my sister and I wanted to learn to play the piano for some reason, but I can't remember why. So we pestered my mum and dad, and eventually they got us a piano. So we started piano lessons, and then the primary school. What do they call the first school you go to nowadays?
Not sort of nursery or sexual primary school.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's the
Primary school,
same.
yeah, same thing, yeah,
So,
same thing, yeah.
yeah. So my primary school, the headmaster was very keen on music, and he was offering everybody music lessons. So my sister took up the cello. I wanted to take up the cello as well because I kind of liked the sound of it, but my mum didn't want us both to play the cello for whatever reason. So I took up the violin, and yeah, sort of was not desperately. I think I enjoyed it, but I wasn't that enthusiastic about it until I got to about 10, and then I went to a different teacher, and I started to hear. He used to play me. He had an old record player, which shows you how long ago this is. And he used to play me records of the really great violinists, you know, Russian violinists, the best of the lot. And I just thought, wow, that's unbelievable. And I really did believe that if I really worked hard, then one day I could sound like that.
Definitely. 'Cause I spoke to a good friend of mine on the podcast, Yasmin Ogilvy. She's an amazing saxophonist as well.
Okay.
Same situation as you, where she got her first saxophone at school. And that's when her first love of music actually came through, and she had fantastic teachers as well. And that's what spurred her on. But I was going to ask about your teachers. What do you feel like, since from 10 onwards, you said, was your teacher really fantastic and really motivated you, do you feel?
Yeah, I think he was. It was a weird situation again, really, because I was with him. I went to him when I was 11, and I stayed with him till I was 24.
Oh, wow.
And that is pretty unusual in classical music, anyway. You know, people tend to go from teacher to teacher after a couple of years, often. So, but he was like, yeah, he was very inspiring. He introduced me to you know, all those players, to kind of different things. And also, I think he was very clever because I was quite stubborn, and he kind of somehow taught me so that the ideas that he was putting forward to me, he kind of made me think that they were my own ideas, if that makes sense. So because I thought they were my own ideas, I was happy to, to do them. So I think he was really clever.
That's brilliant. That is, for me, a sign of a good teacher is someone that is able to kind of motivate you like he did there, and kind of make you feel like it's your ideas that you're putting forward and stuff. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I know that obviously now you give masterclasses yourself. I mean, have you taken elements of what your teacher gave to you into your masterclasses as well?
I try to. Masterclasses are a bit kind of
Obviously
pressurized
different.
because, you know, you've got like a line of people come in and not very much time. But yeah, what I did learn from him, well, one of the many things is that everybody's different. So you can't have like a kind of a rigid system where, you know, you say, this is how you play, this is how you play this piece. Everybody's different. Everybody does things differently. So if you have to acknowledge that, I think.
Of course, I did want to ask you actually how you kind of approach these masterclasses, and I had a feeling it would be like that, where obviously everyone is completely different. And do you feel like you're obviously, as you're obviously incredible, do you feel like you're at that level where you're able just to adapt to any kind of musician and help them where they need to?
I think classically, yeah, I think I can sort of say some sensible things, hopefully, to most people. I mean, other types of music, no, I wouldn't be qualified. I could make general observations maybe, but I certainly wouldn't be qualified to, you know, talk about hip hop or pop or rock or anything like that. So I'm very, I'm in a very niche kind of area.
Mm. And how long roughly do they last for? Are they like, let's say, a couple of hours, or an hour sessions, or half an hour sometimes? They be really short and quick, or how long do they normally last
Generally,
for?
generally about an hour and a half. The last one I did, I think, was in Dubai,
I've had to ask about that one, yeah.
and that was really long. I mean, that went on for 3.5, 4 hours, and I was completely like out of it by the end of it.
I mean, how
Didn't even know where I was.
I can imagine. I mean, how do you cope with such sort of long sessions then, like mentally and physically? Because I think 3.5, 4 hours of obviously, as I know, I'm a pianist as well, so I know what it's like. But how do you kind of cope with such mentally exhausting things for so long? Do you have your own sort of ways, or how do you kind of deal with these situations?
I think I think it's probably the same as everybody else. I think you know, 3 hour, 4 hour rehearsals I'm used to.
Mm.
So I guess over the years I've just found a way to pace myself throughout. Something like a 4 hour masterclass I'm not used to, because normally they're much shorter. So that's very hit and miss. But you know, if I did one of those every couple of months, then I'm, you know, naturally you find a way to sort of circumnavigate it.
Of course. I mean, did you know before? Obviously, you must have known beforehand that it would have been a longer masterclass, or did you find that as you got there?
I knew it was going to be quite long, but people were added throughout the morning to
Oh,
it. So,
really?
yeah. And I also, in the afternoon, I had a rehearsal and a concert in the evening. So
Wow.
it was a long day, but it was fun.
Oh, I can imagine. You must have been exhausted by the end of it, though.
I was exhausted.
Does that happen quite regularly then? People just getting added last minute, or is it? Do you normally know, like, okay, we've got, say, 5, 10 people working with you today, and that'll be it?
Yeah, exactly. It's normally very structured.
Mm. Okay.
I think this was a bit different because there were obviously people who wanted to come and play and show what they could do. And I mean, I was only there for, you know, a short period of time. We were doing 2 orchestral concerts, I think, over about 3 days. So
Wow.
I think that's why it was a bit like that.
Mm. Was that your first time in Dubai as well?
No, it wasn't. Been there before to do concerts. So
Ah, fantastic. From your scholarship, you were appointed co-leader of the London Philharmonic Orchestra at the age of 24. I mean, what was your initial feeling when you were appointed co-leader at such a young age? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Did you feel immense pressure at such a young age? How did you feel at the time?
I was terrified, actually. I not initially, but um, when I got there, I realized that um, I played in orchestras before, but they had been chamber orchestras, so like
Mm.
small orchestras,
Mhm.
and where the music they play completely different sort of
Of
repertoire.
course.
So I really didn't know a great deal of symphonic orchestral repertoire, and even the stuff that probably, you know, most classical musicians know, I didn't know. So I found myself in a position where I was leading a really good symphony orchestra at the top of their game. They were at the time, and playing pieces that they knew backwards and I had not the faintest idea about. So yeah, it was kind of nerve-wracking. And also the amount of work that they did, that was quite daunting as well. You know, they would work for like 6-7 weeks without a day off.
Wow.
Every day they would work, and I certainly wasn't used to that. So
I was going to ask about the workload involved actually, because it must have been immense. I mean, like you said, 6-7 weeks without any days off. And what was a typical day like for you then? Was it, say, from 9 until 9 at night? Or was it like a really long day on each day, or was it kind of broken up into different sections?
Generally, I think probably like a 6 hours of whatever it might be, recording or rehearsals. Sometimes 9 hours of, you know, sessions or rehearsals. I think there was one month where every day was 2 recording sessions, and then you jumped in a car and went to Glyndebourne to play an opera in the evening. So yeah, it was pretty heavy.
Well, I can imagine. How did you deal with the kind of the physicality of it as well? Because you must have had like maybe hand problems from playing so much, or even mentally dealing with the whole thing. How did you deal with both the physical and the mental side of things with that such a high workload?
I would say not particularly well. I did it for like that for about 1.5 years, and then realised that first of all I was getting really tired, and secondly that my playing was going off. And I thought, you know, I can't carry on doing this. So I kind of negotiated with them that I would do less work, which they weren't particularly happy about, but they went along with. And then to be honest, I started looking out for a job where I would have time to be able to practice and be able to not relax, but just to keep myself physically right. And this job at the BBC was perfect because it gave me time to do that.
Before we get to the BBC, actually, which I'd love to get more into, actually, how did the
Sure.
initial position of co-leader come about? Was it recommended to you? Did you go for it yourself, or how did you get the position in the first place?
I saw that the job was advertised. I was in for another couple of jobs with 2 other orchestras in London, and the guy who was leaving, the leader, who was a really nice man, he had come and heard me play at music college about 4 or 5 years before, and he kind of arranged it so that I would go in and do some work with the orchestra to see what they thought. So I did that, and then they kindly offered me the job.
Fantastic. And obviously from there on, you got the position as leader at the BBC Symphony Orchestra, which is obviously another huge deal. I mean,
yeah.
How was that in terms of that position as well? Was that the similar sort of position with the LPO in terms of you sort of position available and you went for it, or was that a different situation for you?
No, I mean pretty much the same thing. I mean, with any of those jobs, you have to audition. Although I didn't audition for the BBC, but
I didn't. Okay.
LPO, I did audition, and then you have a trial period, and they check and see whether they want you or not.
Now, were these positions always like a dream of yours to lead such a prestigious orchestra? Was that always a dream of yours to do that?
No, not in the slightest. When I left music college, I had a string quartet, and that's what I was hoping to do. And then at the time, I went into some of these orchestras to be like an extra player to replace somebody who was taking a bit of time off. And I was just kind of seduced by just how exciting it was, and it kind of glamorous, really. You know, I know that sounds a bit weird, but it was. And so I thought, yeah, this is really good. And that's when I started thinking about maybe trying to get a job of some sort.
Brilliant. And I just slipped my mind there just for a second. Sorry, but you mentioned that's it. So you mentioned briefly earlier about kind of the roles as a leader, but as you're leader now with BBC Symphony Orchestra, what kind of roles are included in your position as leader? What's involved exactly?
A lot of stuff actually. It's so obviously you're the first violinist, so you have to play violin solos in the music. You have to tune the orchestra. You are responsible for discipline in the orchestra. So if somebody's talking too much, then you have to nicely point out that they're talking too much, whatever. You are responsible for recruiting new members. So you sit on audition panels. What else? I suppose the most important thing is you're the main link between the conductor and the orchestra. And so you some of that is by dialogue. So the conductor will say something to you and you will pass it back to other people. And some of it is like a physical thing, which is if you go to a classical music concert with an orchestra, you see the person, the lady or the man sitting in the first violin seat, they will be moving around kind of physically, probably more than anybody else. And they'll be sort of indicating stuff with their instruments and all that kind of thing. And so that's the other way of communicating from the conductor to the orchestra. You're showing with physical movements what you think the conductor is asking.
Okay, so there's a lot involved in it, isn't it, as a leader?
Yeah.
Huge amount involved.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there about if people say I'm talking, for instance, I mean, I have to say nicely, so can you stop talking? I mean, have you ever got to that period where you had to get slightly angry at someone and say, look, you're talking way too much, they're not paying attention, please just try your best now?
Yes, I mean, I've over the years, I've found that I used to get kind of quite irritable, but I found that the kind of if you're going to give anybody a dressing down, that it's best not to do it in front of other people. It's best to kind of take them somewhere private and do it like that, because if you do it in front of everybody else, it's kind of humiliating for them, and also it can often make them more kind of stroppy than they would have been, because everybody's listening, so they stand up for themselves more. So it's not a productive way to do it. I don't think.
And I believe you were on the Conducting Vision podcast where you mentioned that one of the most difficult things is to make sure that the whole orchestra performs as one single entity, because you mentioned about this sometimes 75, 80 members, sometimes maybe even more than that. And obviously you mentioned the roles as a leader. How do you make sure that everyone does perform as one single entity and unity, and they're all playing as well as they could be as one single orchestra?
Well, it's not very easy, but you're helped by, first of all, by the conductor. Obviously has a big role in that. If the conductor's good, then you're already halfway there. If the orchestra's good, then most orchestras can play on their own, even without a conductor. They can pretty much play together and sound pretty good. So all those things help, and you're really just there to pick up on hopefully just tiny little things, which maybe the conductor hasn't probably has spotted but has decided not to mention or whatever.
Okay. And you mentioned about the auditions did as well. As a leader as well, do you have a hand in the kind of auditions of who could join the orchestra?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What is the process that you look for, and the kind of qualities that you look for in a member? Do you look for someone who's already obviously ready made, they can slot right in, or do you see potential someone that can come in and learn as much? What kind of things you look for in someone, and also what are the processes that you take in order for someone to join the orchestra?
Yeah, so there'd be a panel of kind of 4 or 5 people, and the person would come along to the audition, they all have pretty much the same thing to play. So they'd be given, they play two different concertos as it happens, or portions of the concerto, and then they will have been given some what we call prepared excerpts, which are from orchestral music, kind of like the difficult bits. So then they will play them. If that all goes well, then they'll be given sight reading. So and then if they get through all that, then, and they do well, then they'd be put on trial in the orchestra. So that would mean doing rehearsals, doing concerts, being moved around whatever section they're in, so that all the section members can have a chance to encounter them. And that trial can last anything from like 3 months to, I mean, I've known trials that have lasted up to 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is not ideal, obviously, for
to ask, actually, yeah. Is there a reason why they could last for, say, 2 years? Is that to really make sure that they're able to kind of coexist and merge wherever they're needed, or is just a really, what is the reason behind maybe a potentially 2-year trial period?
Well, I think it's not generally because people can't make up their minds. I mean, it could be for instance, it would be something like we've just had where, something like all the lockdowns have happened, we haven't been able to play. So it could be something like that. It often is the fact that these people are also busy and they have to earn a living, they have families, they have mortgages. So they can't come in for the bits of work that we want them to come in for. So it can stretch out quite a long time with pragmatic stuff like that, really.
Have you ever come across anyone who might not have got the position after such a long period, and you've had to kind of consolidate them and let them know that obviously they get the position and they've been really upset at the situation?
Yeah, I mean, yes, is the short answer. But I mean, I've also had to tell people when they've done a short trial and they haven't got anywhere. So I'm not sure. In the end, it's disappointing for them, whether it's short or long, I think. And they get paid for, obviously they get paid for all the work they do. So at least there's that.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. And obviously other things are different now, obviously through what's been happening about the world. But before everything was kind of locked down, in terms of, we kind of mentioned this earlier as well, in terms of practice rehearsals, depending on what kind of things were happening, how long on average were you performing as a group, as an orchestra? Was it like an all day session, or was it, say, a few hours here and there, as much as possible?
Before COVID.
Before COVID, yeah.
Yeah, before COVID. No, I mean, it's basically 5 days a week over the year. And for me, I do other stuff as well. So I probably won't do 5 days a week with the BBC. I do less and do my work outside the orchestra as well. So it can be pretty much continuous, really.
And when you were rehearsing as well, did you aim to perform with as many members of the orchestra as possible for each rehearsal, or did you kind of break them down into smaller segments, say the woodwind section with the percussion, and then the string section by itself, and then towards the end of, say, or nearer the performance date, you would bring everyone together? What were the kind of processes that you took in that sense?
It depends on the music you're playing. If it's very complicated, often I think if it's contemporary music, which has just been written, can be very complicated. So yeah, we will break it down into sections. So we have a string section rehearsal, woodwind and brass normally, and percussion on their own. So yeah, definitely do that when it's needed to do that.
Okay. And as a role of a leader as well, we kind of mentioned this briefly earlier, but with the BBC Symphony Orchestra, do you also have a say in what is performed as well? Say, for instance, if you're not playing as much Shostakovich this year, let's play some of that, or more Chopin or more Mozart. Do you have a kind of say in that sense of what happens at the BBC Symphony Orchestra?
I don't. We don't have an official role in that, but yeah, I mean, certainly one can suggest things. If you're doing a solo piece, for instance, like a concerto or something with the orchestra, then you must definitely suggest what you would like to do, and then they either tell you to get lost or say yeah.
Okay, because I wanted to ask actually, come back to the Conduct Vision talk that you gave, which was fantastic, by the way, as well. You mentioned that, it's my pleasure, you mentioned that one of the obviously difficult things regarding the business side of things was obviously funding for the orchestra, which leads to then the orchestra playing the same sort of things all the time, like for instance, the 1812 Overture and so forth.
Yeah.
Do you feel like orchestras should change their repertoire for the future, or like for instance playing more contemporary pieces and composers, or stick to playing what works and what sells tickets?
Well, I mean, it's difficult because if you are an orchestra who's really reliant upon ticket sales, and most of them are, then you have to a degree, you have to play what people want to listen to. And people generally, the majority of people generally want to listen to, the well-known repertoire. So I don't think until there's proper funding in this country, then I don't think that's ever going to change. I think it's always going to be as hard as they're trying not to. I think there's always going to be that emphasis on the more obvious repertoire. Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, one of the good things about the BBC is that, yes, of course, we have to think about ticket sales, but we probably don't have to worry about them quite as much as the other orchestras because we're funded by the BBC. Of
course.
So that does mean that we can take risks and we can put on stuff that maybe some people definitely don't want to come and listen to. But that's good because it's, we're talking about contemporary music, and it's important to help composers, discover what they can become.
Of course, I was going to ask about how that sort of was dealt with. Do you find it more fun sometimes? Not more fun, but sometimes different to play things that are not part of the normal repertoire, so that keep you kind of motivated as well to play new things all the time?
Yeah, I personally, I like it. I really like it because it kind of gives you a kind of freedom almost, because, if you're playing something that's never been played before, it's kind of fresh. Sometimes with some repertoire, for instance, if you're playing the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto or something, I mean, it's a fantastic piece, but you are very aware that it's been played many, many times. It's, you've heard hundreds of recordings, and you kind of feel this pressure almost to, you're trying to say something a little bit different, because otherwise what's the point really? Why does anybody want to listen to you when they've got all these other great violins playing it? So yeah, a contemporary piece that is really fresh, I like. It feels kind of just feels like you're entering, you're going for a walk in a place you haven't been to before.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any piece that you love playing at the moment in terms of more contemporary or the old repertoire? Are there any piece that you love playing at the moment?
Generally, I like, it's a bit of a corny answer, but I generally like best the thing I'm playing at the moment. So,
okay.
Which of course at the moment is not a great deal, but so at the moment, I've just done an arrangement with with the pianist I play with of a Matt Monro song.
Nice. Okay.
Which is My Love and Devotion, it's called.
Yeah.
Because I've just discovered during lockdown, I discovered Matt Monro. He's such a great voice. So we've done an arrangement for piano trio, and we've just actually video recorded that. So that's my favourite piece at the moment.
Oh, fantastic!
Not contemporary, I know, but
That's fine. And obviously, I know that you're a concert master as well, and you've obviously worked with some of the world's best conductors. What have those experiences been like for you to work with such well-renowned conductors?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great. I mean, not all of them were particularly pleasant to work with.
Really?
Yeah, but some of them were not only great conductors, but also really nice, kind people. So yeah, it's certainly something I look back now and think, yeah, I've been really lucky.
Mm. Did you learn a lot from each conductor that you worked with?
Did I?
Did you learn a lot working with these conductors?
Yeah, I mean, you from a really good conductor, yeah, you learn a huge amount. But you learn a huge amount from everyone, really.
Of course, but to ask, yeah.
If you're surrounded by really good players, which I'm fortunate that I am, then you kind of learn from everybody all the time.
Of course.
I in an ideal world, you would let everybody give them time to develop and see what they become. But it's not an ideal world, so I don't think it's going to happen like that.
It makes sense, so. But last couple of questions actually is, you're also in demand as a guest leader as well, for all the amazing orchestras around, and you've been all over the world actually. What's that been like for you to go from orchestra to orchestra around the world? What's that been like for you?
I mean, it's been good, really good fun. Yeah, and what's interesting is that no matter where you go, these orchestras are all really, really good. So, I mean, that probably shouldn't have been an eye-opener for me, but it was a bit, because, I mean, they're all very, very good orchestras, and they all work in slightly different ways. Sometimes I've found when I go, you have a completely new desk partner, so sometimes that can be great. Sometimes perhaps they're not so keen on you visiting there. So it's all, it's challenging, it's exciting, it's stimulating. I remember when I went to Hong Kong Philharmonic quite a few years ago, and every day for the rehearsal, I used to get on the Star Ferry, which is quite an iconic sort of thing, and used to go across the water and land the other side, and then just get off and walk a few steps into the concert hall. So that's a lot better than getting in the car and driving through the rush hour.
I can imagine. Has that been one of your favourite experiences as guest leader, to go to Hong Kong to perform there with them?
Yeah, I mean, but there's lots of really good memories. I mean, Australia, Melbourne was really good. Where else? And Canada was interesting. They were all completely different, but really interesting in their own way.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, actually, if they kind of differ completely from each other. If they completely differ from each other, like in completely different ways.
I mean, they are completely different, but I suppose in kind of little ways, but kind of, I guess, ways that stand out if you're comparing them. That makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Thank you. But before we go, I just want to say how thankful I am for today. It's so lovely to talk to you, Mr. Bryant. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Georgio. Thanks very much for asking, and thank you for persevering with it after I mucked up the first two opportunities.
No, to be silly, completely fine. I just hope you feel much better now after what happened earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God. But before we go, how can people find you actually online as well, just in case?
How can people
find you online?
Well, I've got a website. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Is that the sort of thing you mean?
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Brilliant.
I'm as far into the proper century as it's possible to be, I think.
Lovely. But thank you again, Stephen. Thank you so much. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, Georgia.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. You too. Take care, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.